For the record, I'm Chief Kim Jacobs, and we're just making an announcement today. First of all, I believe that the history of the Division of Police is that we have a tradition of being progressive, trustworthy, and using best practices. And as usual, that includes being transparent. And so in the interest of transparency and openness, we're announcing today that we had a significant loss in the number of stored cruiser videos that we generally keep. We estimate that number to be approximately 100,000 videos. We also estimate that perhaps less than 500 of those videos were recorded in 2016. So the great majority of those were recorded in the year 2015. On March 8th of this year, one of our sworn division employees with our technology bureau, and one of the very, very few people with administrative rights, was attempting to remove the older classifications that we used prior to the end of 2015. When he approved this change process to remove these old classifications, he believed that they were going to transfer over to our new classifications. However, when he pushed the change button later that night, when the system automatically makes a purge, it deleted those 100,000 videos. That was discovered on the 13th when we saw that the number of videos that we have in storage had been reduced by that number. That is because most of those videos were recorded in 2015. What had happened was, instead of transferring over to the new system, it defaulted, the settings defaulted to a 90-day retention schedule. And because most of them were from 2015, they automatically purged to that 90-day retention schedule. So after we discovered that we had that loss of videos, we immediately started working on whether or not there was a quick restore function, and worked for days, contacted the Department of Technology. Director Orth here was involved with his personnel to try to help us figure out whether or not we could find a way to restore the videos. We've been working with our vendor. We've been working with third-party vendors to see if they have the mechanism to go back into the system and find those videos and then restore them to some usable capacity. In addition to those steps, we've also taken a number of other steps, and there are more to come. That includes finding out what the employee did know at the time and should have known, whether or not this would occur. You know, we don't believe that the system warns you, like my iPhone says, before you do this, are you sure you want to do it? We don't believe that the system informed our employee that this was going to be the result of the change process that he was using. Find out if that deletion was not accidental, as we believe, but instead was purposeful. We would want to know whether or not this was an intentional act. We're also attempting to translate the data that we have into fields that we can read as far as when the video was recorded, and more specific information that can help us determine if it's related to any type of criminal case that we're investigating, and determine if we've already pulled a video. Generally, whenever we have a video that's used in evidence, we would automatically pull that for the officers, the detectives, or the prosecutor's office. We're also going to determine if we can use a third party to help us create that list of the metadata that's still in existence, so that there's no appearance that we're trying to manipulate the information that we already do have, or still do have. We're going also to assess what, if any, impact this has on any pending prosecutions. In general, like I said, that video is going to be downloaded fairly quickly to a DVD so that we have that in the case file. We've also notified both the City Prosecutor's Office and the Franklin County Prosecutor's Office of this situation, just so that they'll be aware of it. And though we've already explored whether or not it's possible to recover these videos, we'll continue to look at that potential in talking to vendors about that kind of recovery, what type of recovery we could expect, and then whether or not it would be fiscally responsible to achieve that recovery process based on what we find out as far as its applicability to any of our known prosecutions. Moving forward, we also will be working on steps that will add checks and balances to make sure that this kind of situation can't occur. In addition, that means we're going to try to create a test environment so that when we push the button, we will see it in a test environment before we actually do it in the live environment. We're also going to have a planned change where that person that plans to make the change would do a check and balance with somebody else and say, this is what I'm doing, this is my intentions, this is why I want to do it, this is what I expect to happen, do you agree, do you approve, all of that. In addition to that, when we put the RFP out for the body camera storage, video storage system last month, we already put out a request for a long-term storage solution so that there'll be a backup in addition to what we are already storing. We have a short-term backup system, but that is not going to be adequate for a situation like this. We also believe that very few of our criminal cases will be impacted by the loss of these videos. First of all, our cruiser video system records what occurs just in front of our cruiser and in the back seat of our cruisers. Most of our work is done outside of the range of our cruiser video system. Typically, also when a cruiser video is requested by our detectives, it's done generally within days and most often within no more than a few weeks or a month or two. We also have automatic triggers that turns on this system. So when an officer goes lights and siren, the camera automatically turns on just because we've got these automatic triggers. And sometimes it records at that time and it just is automatically purged. A number of these videos were backseat. In fact, it was close to 24,000 of those videos were just backseat observation videos. So we don't believe that there would be any evidence that's associated with a prosecution on that. The other big category that we believe was impacted was just misdemeanor traffic stops. So that's one of the reasons why we have this system in place, is to record our traffic stops to show what happened when that stop occurred. And as I said before, since late 2015, we've used a different classification system so that it's much simpler for our officers to understand, and also just for us to know what the retention should be for that particular classification. While we don't think it's going to have a big impact on prosecutions, we did believe that it was important to say this now, rather than waiting for somebody else to discover it. We believe that transparency means acknowledging our mistakes. I take full responsibility for the fact that one of our division employees made this mistake. We'll find out what the bottom line of it was, why it happened, and the impact that it will have on our processes. We don't have all of the answers yet, but we will seek to find them out and to find out whether or not we can recover and restore the videos that we lost. Many of them would have been already being purged, as the fact is that most of them fell into that 90-day retention schedule anyhow. They just happened to be in our system. And since we only do generally keep videos for 2 years, they would have already been falling off. As you know, the beginning of 2015, those videos would have been already falling off earlier this year as well. So we believe that that impact on the system is not to be too great, but nonetheless it's important enough that we show that we're acknowledging this mistake and that we are going to do something to make sure that if it can be prevented. I can't say that it's never going to happen because it's technology, and you know, if things fry up in bad weather, or you know, we have some type of a traumatic situation that could happen, but we do know that there are some routine checks and balances that we can do to minimize such a occurrence from happening in the future. So we believe that it's important for our community to understand that we're going to try to get this fixed. We acknowledge that it happened, it's a mistake, And we will move forward with more checks and balances, especially as we start to record more situations with our body camera system that will actually have a lot more evidence of some of the behavior and some of the crimes that we investigate. So we want everybody to understand that we're working on solutions in that regard to the future. All of us in the Division of Police and the Department of Technology are dedicated to resolving this matter in a manner that reflects the division's integrity and protects the records that we create in accordance with community expectations and the approved retention schedule. Director Orth and I will respond to questions if you have them. We'll have as much information as we know at this time, but there might be some answers that we don't have based on the fact that we're still exploring our options. And then if you have any questions as a follow-up, we'll continue to put out media information through Sergeant Weiner if anything else develops. So, any questions?
Chief, you mentioned the possibility of this being intentional. Is the person involved on leave right now?
Not on leave, but we always do an administrative investigation even when it's a mistake. And just to try to find out and document right now what happened and what was going on and what the thought process was and any intentions.
Can you tell us any more about the employee?
He's a veteran officer that has done good work for us. Very few people have the skills and abilities to work in our technology bureau. He's one of them, and we believe that it was just one of those things that sometimes you're working with your technology and you don't get that little warning that, are you sure you want to do this? And that's what we think happened.
So there's nothing to indicate that it was intentional?
Nothing at all. Correct.
I had one on Facebook, Chief. Someone asked, were any of the lost videos supposed to be used to prosecute an officer for use of excessive force? Serious cases?
None that we know of, not at all. We sometimes use those videos in the investigation of citizen complaints. You know, an officer might be accused of using profanity or doing something near the cruiser, and our internal affairs would have pulled up that video, but they would have done it immediately. That's why we have the 90-day retention schedule.
The person who inadvertently deleted the files, this is a sworn officer, or what's the position? Or
it's a sworn officer. He's assigned to our PoliceNet section in the technical, in our technology bureau.
So what does he do? Like, what's his job? Like, other than the technology bureau, I don't know what that entails.
There's a number of applications that we have. The Department of Technology assists us in many regards with our infrastructure. And then there's the applications that we use. So our records management system, our APHIS system, which is the fingerprint thing. We've got all sorts of software systems that the officers help manage because we need to know how they apply to the type of work that the police officers are doing. So we use officers to help us with the application of like a report that's being taken or something else, and we use the Department of Technology to support all the infrastructure and the really technical details that our officers, don't have.
And you mentioned this person has, he was one of the very few people who had access or administrative capabilities.
Correct.
Okay. You mentioned that he was attempting to remove old classifications. What do you mean by old classifications?
So we've had cruiser video for about 10 years, and initially we thought, well, if you classify it in a number of different ways, we'll know what we're looking for. And so we would say you could classify this as misdemeanor traffic or backseat observation. You could describe it as a misdemeanor. It might be labeled that way because that was the type of run that you got sent on. Some of them were labeled felony, some of them were labeled speed, because one of our triggers is that if the cruiser goes over a certain speed, the camera comes on. And so it has a number of different classifications back in the day to try to identify what we were looking for in the searching of that. But we decided it was way too cumbersome, and the retention schedule is much more clear that way, to just say it's not evidence or it is evidence. And for some things we keep permanently because it might be like a police-involved shooting or something like that, and that has a permanent retention schedule.
Are there any other processes in IT that this problem could relate to? And if so, would you use what you find in this to address the possibility of happening in other areas?
I think it's all about checks and balances, and so any system administrator has the ability to make changes to that system, and we recognize that it doesn't just apply to video systems. So I think the checks and balances that we're talking about are always going to be perhaps, if the system won't tell us when it's about to do something that was unintended, then can we have another person take a look at this and consult with the experts to see what we think the anticipated outcome is going to happen or not going to happen. And then the other thing is creating that test environment, which is really important, so that when I push the button, I see what the results will be, and then I can decide if I want to push it in the live environment.
So that concludes our briefing.
Thank you.
Ohio cop accidentally deleted 100,000 dashcam videos dating back to 2015. An Ohio cop deleted around 100,000 dashcam videos of Columbus cops' traffic stops and call responses after a sworn officer working in the Technical Services Bureau made a few errant keystrokes on March 8. According to a recent press conference, Columbus, Ohio police were not using a backup of any sort. The mass deletion caused skepticism and distrust among many community members and activists who don't believe the vanishment of 100,000 videos was an accident. To me, my first reaction was, this wasn't accidental, community activist Ruben Herrera told NBC4. And if I believe that, there's lots of other people who believe that as well. Police officials didn't even realize the files disappeared until March 13. Which prompted an internal affairs investigation to look into whether or not it was actually an accident. The officer, who so far has not been named, deleted all of the department's videos from 2015 and about 500 videos from last year. Brass at the department assured news media the Columbus police are now taking steps so it doesn't happen again, but the chief stopped short of making promises because we're all human. She said we have taken a number of other steps. And there are more to come. That includes finding out what the employee did know, or should have known, whether or not this would occur, said Columbus Police Chief Kim Jacobs during a press conference, calling the deletions a significant loss. We don't believe the system informed our employee that this would the result of the change process of the system he was using, the chief said. We also want to find out if that deletion was not accidental, as we believe, but instead was purposeful. The chief stated she was coming clean about the blunder in front of the media in order to be transparent. While we don't think it's going to have a big impact on prosecutions, we did believe it was important to say this now rather than waiting for somebody else to discover it, the chief said at a press conference. We believe that transparency means acknowledging our mistakes. The videos were deleted when the officer attempted to simplify the classification of thousands of cruiser video files, which police previously classified into one of 18 categories. For instance, if the camera activated when an officer accelerated a police car, it would be labeled as speed. Columbus police wanted to simplify their classification method to make it only 3 categories: evidence, not evidence, and permanent. The cop relabeling the videos thought the files were in the process of being transferred over to the simplified system before the files were purged when the settings defaulted to a 90-day retention schedule. Defense attorney David Thomas said criminal defendants could suffer the most from the deletion. Video files from a traffic stop could contain footage showing drug seizures or an arrest being made without probable cause. Drug investigations sometimes take over a year to put together, Thomas said. Now, the City of Columbus Department of Technology is assisting police to attempt to recover the files, but they have been unsuccessful so far. Chief Jacobs says whether the videos are recovered or not could come down to whether or not they decide to spend the money in order to obtain the deleted files. Officials said they don't plan to recover all the lost videos. Instead, they'll identify which video files they want to work to recover, then determine the cost and whether a third-party vendor would be required to rescue the lost files they want to retrieve. We'll continue to look at that potential and talking to vendors about that kind of recovery, what type of recovery we could expect, and then whether or not it would be fiscally responsible to achieve that recovery process, Jacobs said. The bulk of the deleted footage is from 2015. About a quarter includes backseat investigation. Another large chunk of files includes misdemeanor traffic stops with less than 500 videos from 2016. We're not at a point where we'll be able to say who those vendors are and what the costs might be, Columbus Department of Technology Director, Sam Orth said. Rob O'Brien, a Franklin County prosecutor, said he believes very few pending cases will be affected, because dashcam video evidence is rarely used in felony cases with the exception of cases involving fleeing or evading charges. When video evidence is needed for criminal cases, it is generally requested in days by police, detectives and prosecutors, Chief Jacobs said. Now that 100,000 videos have vanished, Columbus police say they are developing a checks and balances system to prevent this sort of mishap from occurring again, such as programming the software to double-check with the user before final changes, or deletions, are made. Especially as Columbus cops start wearing more body cameras. To me, my first reaction was, this wasn't accidental, community activist Ruben Herrera told NBC4. And if I believe that, there's lots of other people who believe that as well. Currently, 32 Columbus cops are equipped with body cams. By the end of 2017, the department estimates about 500 will be equipped with body cams, and by 2018 around 1,400 will be suited up with body cams. We're also going to have a planned change, Jacobs said, where that person who plans to make the change will do a check and balance with somebody else and say, this is what I'm doing, this is my intention. This is why I want to do it. This is what I expect to happen. Do you agree? Do you approve? All of that. The Franklin County prosecutor was notified, along with the Columbus City attorney, although no tampering charges have been filed. Chief Jacobs held a press conference in an attempt to control damage to the department's reputation and sentiments of distrust from the community towards the department after the accident. We believe transparency means acknowledging our mistakes, she said. It's much more complex than just the erase, the deletion, accidental, however it happened, Herrera said. But if you just look at that, to me, how does that happen? Columbus police did not have a backup system for dashcams in police cruisers, but vowed to implement a backup system for all the department's body cams. So, now we're relying on another system, of body cams. How are we to believe that's going to protect us? Herrera asked rhetorically. We're not. Watch video from Chief Jacobs' press conference below.
Hey Charlotte County, this is Charlotte County COPWATCH, and I wanted to explain what fair use is. You can use pieces of news articles if you're doing it for news reporting, you have commentary, and you're doing it for education purposes. So that's what fair use is, as you can see right here. Another reason why I wanted to make this video is to let you know I just joined with Patreon. A nice thing with Patreon, I make no money on YouTube. They took the money away years ago, and so this is another way to give, and it's a nice thing too because you can give monthly. You can give $1, $5, $10, whatever. I do 4 to 5 hours a day on trying to wake the sheeple up on how corrupt it is and different ways that you can fight the corruption. So Patreon is a way that you can do it, and then of course the old way is still there. Donate to Charlotte County COPWATCH with PayPal or credit card. So keep that in mind. 4 to 5 hours a day. I make no money, but the corruption happened to me and I'm sick of it, so I'm trying to wake people up. But my wife would love it if if we could get some help out there. There's 47,000 subscribers. Just think if each one of you subscribers just gave let's say actually yes, $1 a month. 47,000 subscribers gave $1 a month. That would be awesome. That's not going to happen. But anyways, that would be great if it did happen. But do the math in your head. Just think about it. Like I said, 4 to 5 hours a day. I get no money from YouTube. YouTube has gone nuts. You can't do anything anymore. They're taking the money away everywhere. So these are a couple different ways that you can still help out with all this time that I put in. And as you know, I'm in a special situation where, at least I can do it, 4 to 5 hours a day. We have a cleaning company during the day. That's what allows me to do this, and we're debt free. So this is my hobby. I don't go fishing and all that other crap. I try to save the world. So help me out to make the wife happy, man. In fact, if you guys did give $1 a day, and there was 47,000 of you, and you did it, and each of you gave $1, and that was every month, oh my God, yes, I could quit. I could start suing them. Another idea too that we have is, if I got, some funds, we could actually contact everyone that has been ticketed and or arrested and put in jail and start sending them postcards to let them know we're here, and to see if everything went all right, and if it didn't, find out their story. So we could even do more investigations and more lawsuits. Lawsuits take money. So just think about that. 47,000 of you so far right now. $1 a day. $1 a month on Patreon, or $5 a month Patreon, 10, 20, whatever. Just do the math in your head. Help out. This is a lot of work every single day. Thanks.